Hi everyone, my name is Caris and welcome to my corner of the internet where I talk about books and other things that I enjoy. Today I'm going to be talking about the 5 books that I read in April. This was definitely the best reading month that I've had so far this year in terms of looking at the pile of things that I've got next to me and having really enjoyed each and every one of them. These all sort of average out at a 4-star rating. There's one that I would probably give a little bit below and a couple that I would give a little bit more. I feel like during March and April in particular, I've really sort of started to become a lot more confident in the books that I know I'm gonna like, and I've been having really good successes with picking up things that I've been intrigued by, things that I possibly haven't read very much like before, especially more literary fiction, and because of that, that's obviously also bringing up more recommendations, and I feel like I've really just found my feet and found books and genres and authors that I'm really genuinely excited about reading. So yeah, that's great, love that for me. I just wanted to say that though, in case you think that I'm being a bit repetitive by being like, I really liked this one. I'm going to talk about the books in the order that I read them. So the first one that I read, I started in March. It actually took me a really long time to read this, but I did enjoy it overall, and that is The Shadow of the Wind by Carlo Ruiz-Zafón. I buddy read this with my friend Louise, and this was going to be my Spanish book for my literally traveling series where I read books from all around the world. Honestly, I know that that series is absolutely flopping at the moment. I had high hopes for it when I started it in December last year. I've done 2 of the videos and I'm really proud of them and I really like them, but I don't know, while I was reading this I just wasn't feeling motivated to vlog it as well, and I think the pressure of having to vlog it was what made me keep putting off picking it up for so long. So eventually I just said to myself, Caris, give up on the vlog, just sit down and read this book and enjoy it for what it is rather than like putting that pressure on yourself. And I did end up getting through it a lot quicker when I removed that factor. I'm glad that I did pick it up because of the series, because I did enjoy it. This is the one I would say that I would probably give a little bit below a 4 star, so somewhere between a 3.5 to 4. And I don't know if that's partly because I did take so long to read it. So I started it at the start of March and I finished it like the first week of April, so that's over a month, and because a mystery is so central to this story, I do think it would have been better to sit down and read it in a much shorter period of time, and then I would have been a lot more invested in it. So if I do ever reread it in the future, that's definitely what I'm going to do. I think that would have really helped with that sort of atmosphere and the tensions building up in this book. I probably should briefly say what this book is about. So it follows the story of Daniel, who when he's a young boy gets taken by his father to this place called the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, and he's told that he's allowed to pick out one book, and he picks out a book by a man called Julian Carax, and he is sort of like instantly intrigued by this author, and then their 2 lives sort of come together as Daniel begins investigating more and trying to find out more about Julian's life. You do learn a lot about the author Julian through the book, and I really liked these sort of parallels that were woven between the 2 characters. I thought that was really cleverly done. Once I got into the mystery, I was definitely invested. There were a few twists and turns, especially towards the end. There were a few things that I didn't see coming at all. The other thing that I really liked about this is the writing style. It did take me a little while to find my feet with the writing style because it is quite descriptive and flowery, I guess you could say. I'm not really sure. It is very rich and therefore quite slow reading as well, so it did take me quite a while, but I did find it really well written and really beautiful, and found that that sort of style really worked once I was used to it. The other thing that I wasn't quite so sure about with this is there are quite a few sexist things that are said throughout this book by certain characters. I don't know where I stand with it. Me and Louise were talking about this briefly, because this book, I probably should have said before, is also historical fiction. It's set during the 1940s in Barcelona, and on the one hand it's like those are the attitudes of the time, but on the other hand, certain phrases that male characters used to talk about females, I didn't feel like they added anything to the story, and then I'm like, did they really need to be there? I did read quite an interesting article about somebody else's opinion on this and the way that the actual female characters in the book were presented, which I might leave a link to in the description in case anyone's interested. I would be interested in carrying on with this series. I believe there are 4 books and they all focus around the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, and they're all sort of interconnected, but they're not following the same characters. If you've read the rest of the books in this series, I would definitely be interested to hear your thoughts. So let me know how they compare to this one and what you thought of them. The second book that I read in April was Love After Love by Ingrid Prasad. I don't think I'm ever going to stop thinking about this book. It made such an impact on me. I'm just going to put a picture of myself on screen as I was reading it one night, because I was not okay. I read this one for Book Bar's virtual book club. This was the first one that they'd ever done. So this book deals very heavily with found family. It's set in Trinidad and it follows three main characters, a woman called Betty and her son Solo, and then a man named Mr. Cheaton. It really just follows their lives throughout several years. I don't really want to say about any of the specific paths that it takes because I really didn't know anything other than that it was about found family before I went into the book, and I kind of liked that, not knowing the different twists and turns that their journey would go on. So in case anyone else doesn't want to know, I'm not going to say here. This is for sure my favourite book of the month. It has just stayed with me so much throughout the entire month. I haven't been able to get this story out of my head, and I think it's going to stay with me for a very long time, and I do think that it's possibly one of my favorite books that I've read this year. The only reason why I brought it down by half a star is because it did take me a little while to get into. You're quite dropped into these characters' lives, and I understand why, but that took me quite a while to get used to. Also, I should have said this is told in multiple perspectives, and I feel like at the beginning that took me a little while to get used to because I was just getting used to one character's voice and then it would be another one. But that did pass really quickly, and as soon as I was into it after like 20 or 30 pages, I was fully invested in this. So I did bring it down that half star for that reason, but I do think that if I was to reread it, obviously that wouldn't be the same experience because I've already read it before and I'm already familiar, and I feel like on a reread I would instantly give it a 5 stars because I wouldn't have that feeling anymore. Yeah, can something still be one of your favorite books if you didn't give it a 5 stars? It was so refreshing to read a book that really had love at its core. Like, that is what it's about. It's about love, but it's about all these different types of love. It does deal a little bit with romantic love, but it's about so much more than that, and about how love, it can be complex, and the certain things that you might do for people because you love them, and how that might not be seen as a loving thing to them, but you did it with love. Thinking about it is making me emotional again, and I just can't wait to see what more this author does. The next book that I finished in April was Cat's Eye by Margaret Atwood. I read this one for Anna from Read to Me at Midnight and her friend Bee's Briar Rose book club. I'm gonna leave a link in the description to the discussion that they had on this. It was so great. Bee made a PowerPoint which was amazing and so detailed. They definitely had a lot of similar thoughts to me, so if you want to hear like a more in-depth review than what I'm going to say now, then definitely go and check that out. But yeah, this was the first of their book club picks, and I hadn't really heard of this book before. I've read The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood before, but hadn't ever really considered reading any of her other books. But then Anna described it in the video and I was like, that sounds like something I would love. It follows the story of a woman named Elaine who is an artist, and she's setting up for this like event back in her hometown of Toronto, where she hasn't been to for a very long time, and being back there sort of brings up all these memories of her past and her childhood, in particular surrounding her friendship with a girl called Cordelia, who was at the same time her best friend and also her worst enemy and her bully. It was just a really fascinating look into her life and this relationship and the way that it changed and developed throughout the years. What I particularly liked about this is the way that it wasn't just black and white. It wasn't just like Elaine's this amazing character and Cordelia's the baddie. You see as they get older how their roles are sort of fluid, and you, I think, begin to learn and possibly understand more about Cordelia. Without like spoiling anything in terms of plot, I would say that Cordelia was definitely the most interesting character in this for me. The one thing I will say about this is that I did enjoy the first half of the book significantly more than the second. I think that's because I just love anything to do with childhood, and I loved the scenes where Elaine was looking back at her actual school days and just talking about like the classrooms and the games that they played. And as you get more to the second half of the book, she's not looking back at that portion of her life anymore. She's looking back at her late adolescence and then her early adult life. I think it's important that that's there because obviously at the point that she's looking back from, she's a lot older, and if it didn't take you right up to like her present day, then you would be confused as to why there was a big chunk of her life missing. But for me personally, the first half was the bit that I enjoyed a lot more. I would definitely be interested in reading more Margaret Atwood. I did like The Handmaid's Tale, but I definitely enjoyed this one a lot more because although a lot of The Handmaid's Tale is based on actual things that have happened or things that could happen, it does have that dystopian element to it, and I do prefer things that are sort of grounded more in recognizable reality. So I'm not really sure which of Atwood's other books would appeal to me based on the fact that I like this more than The Handmaid's Tale. If you're an Atwood fan, I would love to know. After reading that, which did take me like a full 2 weeks to get through, I wanted to read something super quick and super fun, and the book that I read was just the perfect thing for that, and that was The Shelf by Helly Acton. This is a really fun contemporary book about a woman called Amy, who at the beginning of the book thinks that her boyfriend is taking her on holiday to propose to her. However, he's not doing that. He's taking her to be on a reality TV show called The Shelf, and then she ends up staying in this house with a group of other women, and it's basically like Big Brother but for people who have just been dumped live on TV, and they're all competing to be crowned the keeper. As I said, this was just the perfect thing that I needed at the time that I read it. I am a massive fan of reality TV, so I loved that element of this book so much. It just reminded me of the days when I was younger, when I stayed up way later than I should have been watching Big Brother. I definitely got invested in the lives of these characters in a similar way, and this book in places had me raging. Some of the things that the cast of this TV show were expected to do and some of the things that were said to them by men, I was just like, not about that. And I just loved that this book made me feel that sort of emotion. I don't think I was expecting that when I went into it. I was expecting it to be a really fun time, but I don't think I was expecting it to actually make me feel emotions in the way that it did. The reason why I didn't give it a full 5 stars is because I did find some of the things that happened like a bit cliche. I had a great time reading this. I'm definitely looking forward to reading more Helly Acton in the future, and I'm really glad that I've read like an adult contemporary that I've enjoyed, because it's been a genre that I've sort of been a bit wary of, and I don't know why, because I used to read like solely YA contemporary, so I'm gonna have to expand my reading, I think, and try out some more things in the genre. So again, if you've read this and you think I would enjoy other things based on having enjoyed this, please let me know. And the final thing that I read in April, I actually did finish on the first day of May, but literally like before midday, not even 12 hours into May, and I just don't want to save it for another month to put on my May TBR, so I'm counting it as April, and that is Promising Young Women by Caroline O'Donoghue. I read this based off Leanne from Leanne Rose's recommendation, and I really loved this book as well, and I absolutely flew through it. I haven't read a book this quickly in so long. This book follows a young woman who's 26. She has her 26th birthday at the start of the book. She's recently come out of a relationship and she is feeling very adrift in London. She has a job for a advertising firm, but she doesn't really feel like she contributes anything to it. I think it's just sort of like a job for her, you know, she's there, she goes home. She's also just moved into a new flat with someone she doesn't know because of the relationship situation, and she's just very lost, I guess. She doesn't really know what she's doing with her life, and I think that was what instantly drew me to this book, because I think that's definitely relatable. The premise of the rest of this book is basically that the main character begins a relationship with a married man who is her boss and also 20 years older than her, and the central theme is the power balance that is caused in this relationship because of all those different factors. I just thought that it was so cleverly handled. You're following along from the main character's point of view, so it's almost like you see this man and the relationship in the exact same way that she is, and certain things that happen, you can see the main character sort of like brush them off, although you've got this voice in the back of your head being like, that's not okay. Because the main character is able to sort of like justify things so well, you're almost left like questioning yourself and questioning the man and his actions. I thought that was really clever, because that really like plays into the idea of that is exactly how this main character is feeling. I hope that made sense. I don't want it to come across as if like you completely understand why the man is awful, but you can understand why the main character might see it as okay. Aside from the relationship, I also just saw the commentary about being that sort of age and being in London in particular was spot on. There was so much that I related to in this book. There was also so much humour in it in certain places, which I wasn't expecting, because obviously it's a really dark topic, but there was so much humour that felt realistic and didn't feel forced. All these other little elements of realism helped to make the relationship feel real, and you could like fully believe that this is something that was happening. I mean, it definitely is something that has happened. My camera literally just fell off the tripod, so we love that for me. And right from the beginning, I could almost picture this book, and I'm really bad at picturing things, but this read almost like a film to me. I thought that that was really well done as well. I have nothing really more intelligent to say on that. I just thought it was well done. I guess all that you need to know is I really enjoyed it, and I am very, very excited about reading the rest of Caroline O'Donoghue's book. So these were all of the books that I read in April. I hope that you enjoyed this wrap up. I feel like I've been quite rambly because I have a lot of thoughts, but trying to get them out into proper sentences is just not working very well for me today. I'm sure I'll be very frustrated at myself while I'm editing for how much I've waffled on. Please let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, what you thought of them, or just leave me an emoji to let me know that you've watched the video. Other than that though, I hope you're all keeping safe and staying well, and I will see you again next time. Bye!